evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. Oh, wait, I'm confused. I'm in the wrong seat tonight. Wait a minute. Scott, you're supposed to be in this seat doing this stuff. But hold your horses, everybody. Scott's feeling a little under the weather. He's going to give us a good segment, and then he's off to bed. So, without further ado, I'm taking over the reins, but I'm going to introduce my panel tonight. Scott, besides not feeling well, how are you?
Drummed up enough energy to come on our premiere show with three of my favorite people. Hanging in there in the bed. I'll be there shortly, but we're going to have a good show tonight. I know with you leading the charge, you've come so far. Let me tell you.
Well, thank you. And then the person that started Sports Exchange with you, Mr. George Eichhorn. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good, Candy. Good to have you here, and good to be with JB and Scott, of course, always.
Awesome. And then to our favorite sideline sports persona, none other than Mr. JB Ellis. How are you doing tonight, JB?
Doing good. Glad to be here. Glad Scott was able to make it for a segment. Hopefully, he gets better and we're all good going forward.
Let's go to the chat room real quick. Joshua Dorr, you know what? He kept telling me all day, you got to get on. All right, we made it, Joshua. Proud of you for helping me generate just a little bit.
And Joshua, I don't think it's a matter of him getting enough mustard or courage to hop on. Scott doesn't need courage to be behind a microphone at all. He just needs his health to get on here, not courage. He doesn't lack courage behind a microphone, that's for sure.
Yeah, Joshua, I actually use mustard on my Coney Islands is what I do, or my sauerkraut dogs over at my Toastmasters events on Tuesday. I use mustard and relish is what I do. But thanks,
Sloppy. We're all slappies here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to have a plethora of topics tonight, but we're going to start out with one big one that everybody or a lot of people are talking about right now. For some reason, the College Football Playoff Committee just can't seem to shake the idea that the Crimson Tide deserve a playoff spot, regardless of whether the format is in 4 teams or 12 teams. For the second straight season, that affinity for Alabama could come at the expense of a school from the state of Florida. Last year, it was Florida State. And this year, right now, it's Miami. Now, obviously, the committee has not made their final selection. That comes after the conference championship games. But the spokesperson has told everybody that those teams that are not playing this weekend will not change in ranking. So if that happens and there's no change in ranking, the Miami Hurricanes, who only have 2 losses, will not make the slate for the college football playoffs. With that being said, Mr. Scott, Motor City Madmouth, drumming up enough oomph and gumption to come on the show tonight. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, number one, they've left the most exciting team out of the college football playoff, because when you do that, you lose Cam Ward, and he's a heck of a player. You also have Damian Martinez. You have a lot of great offensive firepower there. You really, really do. I mean, of course, you can't forget Xavier Restrepo, who's been catching everything on the planet, and I was in the Miami Hurricanes record books. But here's the thing. Miami lost to 2 unranked opponents. If they wanted to get in or could get in, they had to at least win one of the 2 that they lost, Georgia Tech or Syracuse. Now, Syracuse is a much better team than most people think. Think about it. The quarterback, I think his name was Kent McCord, right? I believe is what his name is. Transferred to Syracuse from Ohio State. He was viewed as a scapegoat when Ohio State lost to Michigan a year ago. I don't like this stuff. I'm going somewhere else. They don't appreciate me up here. So what happens with Ohio State this year? They still lost against Michigan with another quarterback. Can't blame Kent McCord on this one, can you? No. Then Kent McCord leads Syracuse to a really good year. Think about it. I saw Syracuse play at the Boca Raton Bowl. USF beat them by 40-plus points in a shutout. So now you've got a Syracuse team that's totally turned things around. Miami's up 21-0 in the game, and all of a sudden Syracuse got back in it. And I'll tell you, the old adage that goes is this: the longer an underdog sticks around, the better chance they have of winning. That happened in 2 cases on Saturday. Michigan kept hanging around against Ohio State. And as far as I'm concerned, Ryan Day hopes to see another day. Okay. Meanwhile, on the flip side of the occasion, I think that Syracuse is a very unrespected team. But Miami had to win one of those 2 unranked opponents' games, and they did not do that. We saw the Wake Forest game where they got back on track and ended up winning by a wide margin. So the reality is Miami had their opportunities. People are saying, well, why did they go for the field goal instead of go for the fourth down and you'd like 10 to go? Well, number one, Mario percentages, and I've gotten to know him as a heck of a football coach. He really, really, truly is. He was going by analytics. I get that, okay? I'll never second guess him. He doesn't give us a hard time with the media under no uncertain terms. He doesn't. So I'll give him a pass. But the reality of the situation is Miami had to win one of those 2 games. They didn't. I don't know what this thing is about Alabama getting in. I don't get it. I don't have enough in me tonight to talk about the Crimson Tide. Maybe in a couple of weeks or so, we'll see what happens. But that's the reality of the whole situation. It really, really is. So I would have loved to have seen the game get into the college football playoff. I really was. And they started off impressive with a great win against Florida. And they, again, 10 wins and 2 losses for a program 3 years ago that was in a rebuilding mode isn't bad. Mario Cristobal's on the right track to do a lot of good things. And, he's figuring out the transfer portal. He's figuring out NIL. So that's what you have. We'll see, though. I mean, the final makeup of it is still not over yet until Sunday. And then we'll talk about it probably, if not on this particular show, Inside the Pigskin, we'll definitely address it for sure, as well as any other shows that we may come in contact with. But that's what they have. I do believe the Canes deserve to be in it. Opportunities were there. They just did not seize them this time. And I'm going to tell you one last thing before I exit. Andy Borregales, Xavier Restrepo, and Cam Ward will be playing on Sundays.
Okay. So before I go to George and JB, I want to just add a couple different things that throw into the mix. So I get Alabama has 3 losses. Miami has 2. Miami dropped 6 spots for losing on the road to the 9-3 Orange. That's further than previous number 2 Ohio State falling for scoring just 10 points and losing at home to the 7-5 Michigan as a 20.5 point favorite the same day. The other thing I want to put out there, and I get 2 losses, 3 losses, more wins against top 500. There is one common opponent that both Miami and Alabama played this year, and they both played South Florida. The Crimson Tide struggled mightily against the Bulls at home, taking a narrow 14-13 lead to the 4th quarter before exploding for 3 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes and 50 seconds to win 42-16. The Hurricanes shut out South Florida in the second half of their Week 4 contest and won 50-15. So, with some of those other added elements, George, what are your thoughts?
Infatuation. This comes up so often in the last several years, but it's all so important. I know oh, we got to get Alabama in, Alabama this, Alabama that. Okay, Saban's out of there. They still worship the ground that Alabama walks on. And this stuff's got to stop because obviously last year they were shown to be not contenders. Now, this year, even with 3 losses, they're pushing them in there. And I agree with you, Scott and Candy. I mean, Miami, real good year. And granted, they did not win one of those 2 that you had mentioned, Scott. And I do believe that was the killer right there. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not the strong Alabama team, Michigan team, heck, they got 5 losses, but they don't have 3. But all I'm saying is, I don't care what your name is, if it's that big a name, you still have to rank these teams based upon their performance this year. And and counting for history and counting for, I know what they always do. They don't claim they do it, but counting for a size, does their alumni, does their fan base travel? All this stuff goes into it. It's still not the perfect method. And this year, it's proven out again. It's not perfect. I don't like it either. Something's got to change.
JB, your thoughts so far?
First of all, the fact that it's the first year of the 12-team playoff and Alabama is begging to be let in is phenomenal. Because they were in every playoff like imaginable for how long. And now there's 12 teams, and this great institution of football is begging to be one of the 12. And you know what? They just don't belong. Now, this season has been strange. There's been many upsets up and down the line, and it has happened to every team. When it comes down to it, Cam Ward is a phenomenal quarterback. He's a guy who I hope goes to New York for the Giants because we need somebody. I think Miami's biggest problem is they're not a great team. They're a good team, but unfortunately, they're not great yet. And they'll be great if Cristobal does his thing over the next few years and builds it because he's done a great job getting them to where they are now. But they had too many issues where they toyed with opponents. And like Scott said earlier, if you allow a team to stay in the game, eventually it's going to catch you a couple of times. You're going to lose, But they didn't lose any game that they weren't capable of winning this year. And they won some that were ugly, but still, at the same time, it's not the SEC playoffs. We don't need 85 3-loss teams getting into this 12-team playoff. Alabama does not belong.
Right.
Miami has done an impressive job this year going out there and beating the teams on their schedule. Yes, they have 2 losses, but, two is better than 3. And, I would argue that the SEC is not the best conference this year. If you want to say who's the best conference, I would say the Big Ten is by far and away better than the SEC this year. And we'll see what happens. To me, the biggest phenomenon with this year's college football, every single conference championship game for all the big conferences has a team that just went into the conference this year. You got SMU in the ACC. You got Oregon in the Big Ten. You got Texas in the SEC. And I believe in the Big 12, it's, I think, BYU, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. I forget. I looked at it yesterday. It's just shocking that, all these conferences, which had great teams in them already, the SEC, the Big Ten, they were phenomenal conferences. But yet, somebody that they brought into the conference got all the way to the championship. So that just goes to show me Alabama doesn't belong. They're not there anymore. Sit down, shut up, you're done.
Right.
But give Miami a chance. South Carolina, who has 3 losses, would be a better choice. But I'd rather see Miami get there.
Well, and let's face it, when they talk about, they didn't win against ranked opponents, but their 2 losses were for a total of 9 points between the 2 games, whereas Alabama lost one game, 21-3. And if you let's just look at total offense. Miami has the most yards out of all of the college, out of all the schools. Alabama with 6,459 yards. Alabama ranks 38th with 5,073 yards. When you look at points, Miami leads in total scoring points with 530. Alabama has 426. Now I get, obviously, defense matters. So let's look at defense, because I was just pulling that one up. And let's see. Miami, again, 3,839. Alabama, 3,971. So in some of these categories, they're also ahead of them. I think you look at strength of schedule, but you also look at strength of schedule is great, but these schedules are made years in advance. You have your conference, but outside the conference, sometimes these schedules are way out in advance. You don't know if they're going to be good or bad or not. And now with NIL, how many things have changed with that whole dynamics changing. So I think that's really hard sometimes to put that on a team, like your strength of schedule, your strength. Go ahead, Scott.
Let me point this out, though, okay? Yes, they're made in advance, but when you have expansion coming in, they had to really rip them up and do them all over again. Keep in mind, on last night's edition on Inside the Big Ten, we talked about SMU going from the death penalty to the ACC championship, and they're not even collecting any revenue from the conference for 9 years. But when you got Dallas Oil money, okay, don't worry. You don't need any revenue for 9 years. You moved up in class is what you ended up doing. So, you know what? You got Oregon, who's been an excellent team as well. So there's two of the additions. So you knew they would be. I mean, USC ended up getting humble pie when they came in here. Oklahoma got humble pie when they ended up going into the SEC, and Texas is just a great program, and they made the acclamation well. Yes, the non-conference portion of the schedules were made a little in advance, but the conference schedules had to get rewritten pretty quickly to accommodate this expansion.
Yes. Conference, yes, but non-conference, no.
Oh, Michigan, for example, they had Texas on the board for years. I mean, that was, like you said, that was set up a long time ago. Well, they didn't know they were also going to have to play Oregon and Southern Cal and Ohio State, on and on and on. I mean, it was a crappy year for Michigan, but I'm just saying that, the non-conference part, and Scott is right. There are some teams that did have to adjust and maybe back away temporarily from a long-standing opponent. You didn't see Michigan or Michigan State play Notre Dame, which we don't see regularly like we used to. But I agree. I mean, these schedules got tougher for a lot of teams. I give Oregon a lot of credit, coming into the Big Ten, all the travel, all the miles, the distances and all that. And here they are sitting pretty. Of course, Penn State could spoil it, but we all know that Oregon's going to be one of the top seeds. But I'm just saying, you're right. You're coming into a brand new conference, JB, and you hit that spot on, man. All these conference games, championships have one of the new brethren in them. Yeah.
And going to the chat room, I just want to address Blows. He says, I see Xavier getting the Heisman. Xavier is not up for the Heisman. Cam Ward is up for the Heisman for Miami, but not Xavier. It's Cam Ward. It's the guy from Colorado that plays both, Travis Hunter. He plays both. And then who else? Who else is up for Heisman? Do you guys know?
Cam Ward, obviously. We got Cam Ward.
Isn't Deion Sun the quarterback up for it?
Shedeur Sanders.
Well, but he's way down on the list. The guy from Boise State, I think, is the front runner. Genty.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right now. I think between him and Travis Hunter right now are the two top people.
And he thinks Chris has Oregon winning. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see. I could care really less about the Heisman Trophy. It's not the ticket to winning a Super Bowl. I could use that as a topic somewhere else, but not tonight.
Xavier's not up for the Heisman, but I do see him being in the NFL next year.
Well, that's a no-brainer there.
A lot of these guys are going to jump. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It is. Scott, you have any more you want to talk about up
No,
front?
I think I pretty much have said my piece. Good to be on here, talk about the Canes with you. Candy, JB, and George, I know you'll do a good job taking us the rest of the way. Thanks, and everybody have a great weekend.
Rest and
Thanks,
feel better,
Scott.
man.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Okay, guys, let's do a little MLB. Juan Soto, where's he gonna wind up? Where do you guys think? JB, why don't we start with you?
So it's no long loss thing that I'm a Yankee fan. I would love for him to stay. Do I see him staying? Scott Boras is his agent, which means it's going to be a long, drawn out, crazy process. You know, I have a feeling he's going to go wherever he wants to go. Money wise, the best team would be the Mets, I would think. They're probably the number one target with the most money to offer him. But, it depends on what he really wants. I mean, I think the Yankees offer is going to be somewhat close. I don't know if they would match what Cohen would throw at him with the Mets, but we'll see. I mean, to me, it was kind of telling back in September when he hit the home run in Seattle and he made the comment, well, now we have a home run at every stadium. That'll be great for free agency, that he wanted a lot of money. And he was going to get it either way. But to me, that was the wrong time to talk about free agency. So if he leaves, no love lost. But, of course, he's a great player. I'd love to see him stay in the Bronx. But I think he's going across the city over to Queens to Citi Field with the Mets.
George, what do you think?
Yeah, that seems to be the indication that the Mets are the ones that will win the sweepstakes. Boy, it's tough to have the Yankees say goodbye to him. I mean, my goodness, they came that close, obviously, to winning it all this year, losing in the series 4-1 to the Dodgers. But you take a look at his record. I mean, he had 5 years in Washington with the Nationals. Soto did, and then in 2 years, as you might recall, in San Diego. But one of those was the COVID season, so his stats were very small compared to obviously what they would have been the first of those 2 years in San Diego. And then look what he did for the Yankees: 157 games. 166 hits, 41 homers, 109 ribbies, and 129 walks. And it's going to be a big hole in that Yankees lineup next year if they do lose him. But hey, look what happened to Ohtani. You know what I mean? He went from one city in Southern California, LA, to another team, and the same thing could happen this year with Soto crossing over from Yankee Stadium over there to Citi Field. And, like you said, JB, they got a lot of money. The Mets are going to have a lot of money to throw around. They always do, seem to. Maybe not as much as the Yankees and the Dodgers, but obviously they smell success. They want to close the deal and bring Soto over there. That's my thinking too.
The floor for Soto's new deal is widely considered to be $600 million, with $700 million reportedly becoming increasingly likely if interested teams are willing to add a 14th or 15th year to acquire the 26-year-old. Could you imagine being under contract for 14 or 15 years and on a baseball contract, mind you, not like us that normally have contracts like that, but I mean, $600 to $700 million.
Well, it's the same thing with Miguel Cabrera. The Tigers paid the price. They paid the price, but the last few years they got very low run production power from him. And I know he's one of the greatest ever. I'm not condemning that, of course not. But you're right. You bring these guys in, you give these contracts, and like you said, Joe, you got Boros in there doing all the pulling and trouble, making all the trouble. It is tough, but that's what the market's going to bear for somebody of this status. I mean, but it is crazy. It is absolutely crazy when they're that old. Some of them may not even be able to walk. Ugh. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I just look at that. He's still 26. So signing a 14-year contract doesn't make much sense to me. he's still got his 5 great years ahead of him. Now, I get that he wants long-term success and long-term money, I guess, because it takes all the pressure off of him. But if he signed a 5-year deal now and he has the 5 projected years he would have, what would he be worth in, 3 to 5 years? I disagree with this long-term deal for him. I think it's actually better for the clubs. Because you look at the NBA, for example. Look at what a guy makes now, and look at what, if you signed a 5-year deal 5 years ago, you would have gotten ripped. You would have lost so much money over the course of the 5 years. I don't think it's the right move. I mean, I get that it's guaranteed 700 million, 600 million, but if you took, I don't know, you said to the team, okay, I'm going to do a 4-year deal, but I want a little bit more. Give me 65 per. So you're already being around 260. After 4 years, what his stats would command, he'd have no trouble probably getting the rest of that money at the end of the time.
But do they think that maybe he'd be declining at that point, or not have too many more really good years and then not want to go as long term out? I don't know, Joe. I don't know what the answer to that is. And the answer could be, what if he gets injured and stuff like that and can't fulfill all of it either as well? So, I mean, it's a crapshoot for either one, I suppose.
Oh yeah, I mean, I get the 700 million guaranteed. I get. I just if I'm one of the best players of all time, and he's in that group that one day could be. He's
Yep.
not that one now, but he could be.
Mm-hmm.
Would I want to lock myself in and not have a chance to renegotiate? Yeah, he could try and force a renegotiation, but he looks bad doing it, and the team will have no reason to say, okay, let's do it.
Right.
If you sign for 5 years, 4 years at that kind of money, I think he could get the other 400 million, 500 million without a problem with the numbers he's going to put up. I get the issue is always, if he gets hurt, but I mean, you take chances in life. Between
Yeah.
200 million and 700 million, do you need the difference? If you lost that bet, is it going to change your life that much?
I
think
agree. I agree. I think it is better for him to be at a point where 5, 6 years from now, going back to the negotiating table and proving that, hey, I did this, I did that, and my agent's going to push this even higher. The threshold will be higher. I know what you're saying, Kennedy. The result of an injury, we know that. And but like I said, the Tigers got screwed because they waited and waited and waited. And Miguel tried different things to get in better shape, better training techniques and all that, but he just lost the zip on his bat. And they did the same thing with the designated hitter. Remember a guy named Martinez was in Detroit? And he's the same way. They kept him around 2 years too long. That's because that Dombrowski gave him a sweetheart deal and Mike Ilitch. But all I'm saying is that this kid Soto, yeah, he's got Hall of Fame written all over him. I would be leaning towards more of JB your scenario than I would the long-term 14-year stuff. But it's a crapshoot. I agree.
the only way I would do a long-term deal like that is if I had an opt-out after 4 or 5 years. Because if the market changes, which in sports it does, it goes up by tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. If I had an
Mhm.
opt-out after like year 5, 8, and 12, because who knows what baseball you can play pretty decent up until almost 40 if you have that longevity and luck. If I have that opt-out in there, by all means, I would sign a long deal. Otherwise, no, I'd want a shorter deal.
Okay. So let's move on and turn it to the Baltimore Ravens today. Suspended wide receiver Deontay Johnson 1 game without pay for conduct detrimental to the team. The team banned Johnson for refusing to enter Sunday's game against the Philadelphia Eagles. What do we think about what the Baltimore Ravens did and what Deontay Johnson did? Let's start with you, JB.
So was there a reason he refused to go in the game? He was recently traded there. Did he know the playbook? Was there was he unsure of what his role was going to be? So there's a little bit more to the story. It's not as if he was with the team all year and it's week 13 and he just says, I'm not going in. He's there 5 days and, he's saying, or short term, and he's saying he doesn't want to go in. So I kind of could see it both ways,
JB,
but
he was traded on October 29th. So
Okay.
he's been there. He, in 7 games with the Panthers, had caught 1 pass for 6 yards, and in 4 appearances with the Ravens, while only playing 39 offensive snaps. So he's played 4 games now with the Baltimore Ravens.
Okay. I mean, so that, I don't know. I mean, if you're not going to go in the game where the coach tells you and you're there an amount of time, there's really no excuse for it. It's your job. That's what you get paid to do. You don't get paid to stand on the sidelines. If you're told to go in the game, get in there and do what you got to do.
George, thoughts?
Yeah, I was surprised too, and I don't know if there's any kind of injury or something holding him back. I know that the Ravens, Bateman, he was sidelined in the game, in the second half with a knee injury, and then you've got this situation here with Johnson not really wanting to go in. I mean, we don't have the whole story here, like you said, but yeah, he was traded from Carolina to Baltimore way back at the end of October. Come on now. He should have no problem adapting to the playbook. He should have a positive attitude regarding practicing. You're going from the outhouse to the penthouse. Although now I really think that Baltimore was clearly overrated, like the 49ers this year. It's getting to be more and more like that. But the fact of the matter is you're a pro, okay? And you're getting paid good money, just as all the receivers are on that Baltimore team. And you've got to perform when they ask you to perform. You got to go out there and play your best. And it's just not a sport to be half-assed about or to be, crying about, I didn't get this kind of playing time or whatever was going through his mind. Could have been something on the home front. We don't know. Like you said, JB, there'd be more to the story than we'll ever know probably. But John Harbaugh, you don't mess around with him. This guy's been a coach a long time in this league, and he can smell a dirty rat, if you so to speak. And I don't mean it that bad, but I mean that something was going on there. And hey, you're not ready to go in when I asked you to go in, or the offensive coordinator wanted to send him in or whatever. Hey, you could just take a seat. And that's a tough move. And now they come and say, "Oh, you're suspended 1 game." Boy, that doesn't look bad. I mean, that doesn't look good at all for Deontay Johnson. I'm sorry. The kid still has good potential, but you got to play this game 110% every week, every Sunday.
So knowing that, now let's switch a little bit and talk a little bit about what happened after some of these rivalry games this past weekend. Especially, and I know, George, you're just gonna roll your eyes. I can already see it now. Michigan versus Ohio State. We have to bring it up because it caused a police officer to have to go to the hospital and get treated for injuries he sustained trying to stop the fighting. They had to mace players on the field from fighting to stop them from fighting. And now, yes, they came down and they handed Michigan, the School of Michigan and the School of Ohio State, $100,000 each team has to pay. But what consequences are there for the players that were on the field that actually did the fighting? What do we do with that? Where do we go from here to stop that? And how did it come to that? We were talking about this on a different show that I was on the other night, and I said, in some of the big games for hockey, you have fighting on the ice during the game, and then after the game, you have sportsmanship, and you go and you high five everybody after they win a big championship or something. Where did we go wrong when we stopped doing that and we went to fighting at the game and having to, let's say, disrespect the other team by saying, okay, I got to take my flag and post it on top of your logo on your field? Like, I get you just won a big game, you were big underdogs, but to kind of do all that. So, kind of give me your thoughts about any or all of that, George. We'll start with you since you're from Michigan.
Well, I was not happy. In fact, I was appalled by that action. I really was. This trick has been tried before in various football stadiums when they run around with the flag and try to plant it. Or I've even seen stupid behavior like stomping on the logo. I think some NBA guys have done that too. You go to center court and you stomp on the logo if you're with a visiting team after you won. This is nonsense. It really is nonsense. I was appalled by it. I was not happy about it. I'm not pointing fingers at either side because they were both guilty. Michigan, that wasn't illegal to do what they did. So if they did bring out the flag, then obviously that was something that had been done before. But Ohio State was PO'd, and they had a right to be losing a game like that as 20 some point underdogs. But this goes much further than this. How about all these fans that we're turning a blind eye to? We're back into the ripping down goalposts now. And I thought that stuff stopped, 5-10 years ago. Early, every time your team upsets somebody, take those goalposts and women and men fans, it doesn't matter, male or female, sitting on those posts. Injury could happen. They're throwing carrying the post and taking it to the river. Come on. So we've got a lack of security, is what I'm saying. We really do, because they turn their head the other way when they see after an upset fans run all over the field. Did you know that those fans that run out on that field, the loser of that game is still on the field? I'm surprised we haven't more, some smart aleck fan try to cold cock the coach or one of the players on the opposing team. You're letting all these fans on the field, and like I said, the teams aren't even dispersed yet. Of course, they're not back in the tunnel yet. But Michigan, here's one thing I will say: they can't have it both ways, because when Michigan State and them they got into that tunnel dispute at Michigan Stadium, the first thing that Michigan did is they ran to the police. They ran to the prosecutor's office. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. And they hauled those Spartan players into court. Oh, so what happens now? Oh, it's all settled. I'm sorry, our players acted like that. And even the Big Ten, that's a slap on the wrist. $100,000 fine. They make money hand over fist, as we know, on the big sports like football and basketball. But all I could say is that, yeah, both teams are guilty of this. Maybe Michigan a little bit more. I'm not a big fan of pepper spray being sprayed on a player, but they wouldn't stop their violence. I guess the cops were out there. But the fact of the matter is, you can't have it both ways. There's got to be more security, and they got to get rid of that rule about carrying flags around. That's nonsense. That's got to stop too. I'll get off my soapbox because I want to hear what JB and Candy have to say.
JB.
Listen, nobody likes their opponent, when you're playing the game. For the 60 minutes during the game, you can hate your opponent. You can't try and hurt them because that shows no class. But you can literally hate them for that 60 minutes. I'm okay with it. When the game ends, act like you've done it before. You don't need to go plant the flag at midfield and be disrespectful to somebody else's house. You just showed the utmost disrespect by beating them. Now shut up, celebrate on your sideline, jump up and down, do whatever, get off the field, go home. Be an adult. You're over 18 in college. Be an adult. There's no reason to show disrespect for the people you're playing. It's disgusting. And it's not Michigan, it's not, any particular team. Everybody does it. Yeah, I get it's a huge rivalry. I get you beat the team. They were ranked number 2. I get it. Go to the locker room. Go out for dinner with the guys. Have a party at the frat house. Whatever you want to do. Get off the field. Listen, they lost. And on the opposite side, you lost the game. Who cares that they put a flag at midfield? Go to the locker room. Figure out what you can do to be better next week. Get a life. You don't need to fight over that. You want to know what's a legitimate fight? What happened to Trevor Lawrence, how his lineman came and had his back. Now, I still don't think that Aziz tried to hurt him. I think it was inadvertent, but that's my opinion. And I haven't watched the play. I'm just going from my experience dealing with professional athletes. Most of them don't try and hurt other players intentionally. But if you're playing and you think someone tried to hurt your guy intentionally, yes, that to me is an allowable excuse to fight. Besides for that, planting a flag, go in the locker room. Listen to your coach. Learn how to be better for next week. Don't waste your time with this because all you're going to end up doing is getting suspended, getting arrested, getting hurt. And none of that's going to help your career or your team. So grow up.
The sad thing that I will say is it was probably, I'm guessing it was senior day because it would have been the last game Ohio State players regular season. So it's senior day. And I feel bad for all those seniors that's how they got to go. I mean, and they're probably, some of them were probably involved in it. I'm not saying that they were or weren't because I don't know personally. But it's sad that's the memory you're going to leave. Your home field that you've played on for however many years, whether you are a transfer in and you've only played 1 year but you're going to leave with that feeling that on your home field until you play the next game, whether it be, on your home field, whether it be you're coming back next year or you're not coming back. That was it.
Yeah.
That's what's sad.
Yeah.
What's sad is
we
have lost respect for people. And
yeah,
if you are upset, you're angry, you don't like your rival, like JB said, show it on the field during the game. Whatever game you play, don't intentionally harm them, but play your best for you and your team to beat them. And if you get beat, you get beat, And then what I would say is if you are the opposing team, go celebrate in the locker room so that you can do it behind closed doors because, yes, it's your right to do it. And yes, you can go by your fans and maybe have a couple minutes celebration with them, but then go off. Let the home team, especially on the last game of the season like that, so that the seniors could go around and maybe walk around and say thank you to, I've seen hockey teams where the home team will come out and they'll shake their sticks on the ice, kind of as a thank you to all the fans for being there. Because let's face it, that's the last time a lot of those seniors are going to be on that stage at home, at their home stadium, whatever stadium it is. So that's where I think it's just really sad.
Well, I agree. And hockey does it the right way. In the Stanley Cup playoffs, I don't care if it's the first round or the cup finals. They're always there at center ice to shake each other's hand. That is such a class way of doing it. And that's been a tradition in hockey for God knows how many years. But you're absolutely right, guys. Take that celebration, JB and Candy, do that in the locker room. Do it back when you get back to campus. As a matter of fact, Michigan, they were all invited to the Michigan hockey game that night. So once they got back to Ann Arbor, Coach Moore and several of the players were introduced at the hockey game. But unfortunately, that was all marred by the talk about what happened on the field. So yeah, this stuff's got to stop. I mean, we don't need violence. We don't need more aggression and more bad things going on like we've seen. No.
So let's move over to the NFL. I want to talk a little bit. The previous employers of Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs surveyed the landscape and decided not to prioritize keeping alpha running backs. Now they rank 1, 2, 3 among NFL rushing leaders for teams that collectively are 24-9. The teams that let them walk are a collective 7-26. So what do we think about the previous employers letting Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs go? Any thoughts? George, we'll start with you.
Well, I think it all comes down to when and Mel Farr Jr. has talked about this on Inside the Pigskin many times, in the fact that the relegation of the running back, the rusher, over the last many years, it's just been diminished. And and he always wonders why. And I don't know what's wrong. I don't know because look at the Detroit Lions. They're successful because they got two guys in that backfield that are willing to go and play their best every game. They're both if they won't be, they'll one of them, maybe both of them will be 1,000-yard rushers this year. I'm talking about Montgomery and Gibbs. But the fact of the matter is that I don't know if they didn't feel that Barkley, fit in. You mentioned about Henry and what was the other one, Jacobs.
Mhm.
Change of scenery is nice though for any athlete when it's necessary. So in defense of those trades, these guys here leading the league, the top three after moving around. I mean, that tells you a little bit about something, but it also tells me something about not getting along with his previous coaches, whatever the reasons were. Didn't like it playing there, so I want to trade. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but it is kind of funny though, and it hurts all the teams that they left because these guys are having a hell of a year, especially Barkley and Henry. Oh, I don't know. It's you gamble a lot when you trade running backs, but boy oh boy, this one's coming back to haunt their former teams.
JB, your thoughts?
So, look at Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs. They were on three horrible teams. Even with them on the teams, they were horrible. Now, I know the New York Giants better than the other two. I could tell you Saquon Barkley would not be having the same year if he was playing in MetLife Stadium as he's having by playing in Lincoln Financial Field. Different team, different offensive line, different coach. Not that Saquon's not great because, he had over 1,000 yards multiple times with the Giants. But, they're just not set up the same. The offensive line does not compare. And he would not have gotten the Giants to the amount of wins that they have in Philadelphia. He was blessed to be in a good position. Derrick Henry, very similar. The Titans were, kind of the same as the Giants. They don't really have a great quarterback. They don't have a very good defense. They don't have really much. And Derrick Henry wasn't going to make them a playoff team. Josh Jacobs, he's a little different. He went from leading the league in rushing one year to a really horrible year. Wasn't hurt, just couldn't run the ball very well. And the Raiders gave up on him, and the Packers took a chance, got rid of Aaron Jones, and it's working out well for them. So I don't really fault the Raiders as much as I do the Titans and the Giants because I think that they knew that they had, studs in what they had. But at the same time, I don't think either would have made a difference for those teams. It's just a bad look when you let somebody like that go for almost nothing or nothing.
And the one thing that I will say that I know Melfar has said numerous times on Inside the Pigskin is the devaluation of running backs is kind of awful because if you think about it, the running back touches the ball more than any wide receiver because they can be a pass catcher and they have to run the ball. So like they're in a lot more plays, they're doing a lot more. So why they've gotten devalued and people weren't valuing them as much, it's kind of beyond most of us, considering they are very important. But so we'll see.
And then, and I was just going to add, Candy and JB, don't forget too that with these offenses, a lot of these running backs are not getting enough action because the quarterback runs the ball a lot. We know the trend in the last half dozen or more years, draft a quarterback that can run the ball. So in a way, that's taken a little bit away from the running game, but it's added a new dimension. I think a lot of these teams are really sold on that. Gee, we got to have this mobile quarterback. Gee, he can run whenever we need him and all this. So I think that might be one of the factors. I'm not saying it's a good factor, but I think that might be one of the factors on some of these coaches and these staffs. If they have a mobile quarterback like that. Just saying.
So, quick question. Does Mike McCarthy deserve a new contract in Dallas? And if he doesn't, do you think he'll get another coaching job and where? We'll start with George.
Well, I haven't given this a whole lot of thought. I don't think I think Jerry Jones has got to move on. I really do. And you know, it's not all Mike's fault. Of course not. We know that. There've been some lot of problems there building the interior line. They've been and you know, Dak has been hurt a lot and a lot of negative stuff going on. And plus Jerry's got to have his finger in everything. And I mean, I know he's got a great track record, but the fact of the matter is, again, Yankees, Cowboys. I mean, these are America's teams, and yet they're not winning it all anymore. And I do think that Mike's a good coach, but I do think it'd be better for the franchise if he moved on. Where he would end up going, I don't know. There's so many coaches that are on the hot seat right now, and the opening in Chicago now after they fired their coach. I mean, he might possibly go back there, and but there'll be teams looking for him. But I think Jerry should move on and try something different because it's certainly not working as far as championships go or anything near a championship.
JB, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I can't understand why they would want to keep Mike. Great coach, Super Bowl winner, but it's just not working. Like George said, Jerry, first of all, got to fire himself as the GM, which will never happen. Derrick Henry wanted to play in Dallas, and he couldn't figure out how to get him in the budget, but yet gave Dak and CD all this money, and they can't run the ball to save their life right now. But it's just not working with Mike. Not that he's a bad coach. Sometimes, it's just not the team. You can't get what you want with a certain team. You just can't get the message. You don't have the personnel. Could be for many reasons. It doesn't mean that he's a bad coach. It's just not the right situation. So, and it's be better for him to go somewhere else. He'll get a job if he wants one. He's good enough, and he's proven he can win. It's just it's not working there. And I don't know if I'd want that job, to be honest with you. I think I'd rather, I could think of about 20 other jobs in the NFL I'd want. I don't want to have to deal with Jerry. Jerry's out there. If we're talking business and like how to build stuff, how to get an empire, yeah, I want to be next to Jerry 24/7. Coach his team now. I don't want nothing to do with it. Good luck, Jerry. Find somebody else.
Okay, predictions for tomorrow night's game. Green Bay goes into Detroit. Detroit is number one in our division. They have one loss. The Packers have 3 losses. Last time they played, Detroit beat Green Bay in Green Bay, but the last time they played in Detroit, the Packers beat Detroit. And Detroit has numerous defensive players that have gone down to injury. So, JB, your prediction, who's going to win tomorrow night's game?
Listen, you can't go against Detroit at this point. They just keep winning, and it's an important game. They have to keep their lead over Philly. So they need to win. Green Bay, they're making the playoffs no matter what as a wild card. They're a game behind the Vikings and 2 games behind the Packers, behind the Lions. A win would be huge for them. They're just not there yet. They're way ahead of where I expected them to be, 2 years into Jordan Love's starting career. I'm glad to see where they are, but they're just not the Lions yet. But this is by far, if the Vikings can stay where they are, this is going to be the best division of football for at least 7 years between those 4 teams, because they all have a lot of talent, and they're all going to be getting better, except for the Lions, who are near where they should be right now. And how long can they stay there? But they're still going to be there a few years. So you're looking at least 5 to 7 years of this being the best division of football.
George, your predictions for tomorrow night?
Well, it is hard. It is hard, even though to go against the Lions, because even though all these injuries, they still find a way of making something out of it. And Detroit's offense and their defense has stepped up the last few weeks. Aaron Glenn has done a nice job all year, really. But I mean, it's really, Houston, they didn't really do any kind of domination. Even the Thanksgiving Day game, the Bears could have won or at least tied that game with better clock management. So there are a lot of people, I'm hearing a lot of whispers, reading stories about they're thinking Detroit's going to go on a 2 out of 3 losing streak, or one clown called a show today and they're going to lose their next 3, which I don't think they will, but they do have a tough schedule, the Lions do. And Green Bay is not an easy opponent for Detroit. You mentioned Candy and that game on Thanksgiving last year. Very few people gave Green Bay much of a chance to beat Detroit, but they did. And that was the last time they were in town. Now, the fact of the matter is that these injuries, though, are going to catch up with any team if they multiply. And that's what's happening. They're losing 2 or 3 guys a week. Malcolm Rodriguez last week went down. And then, of course, you got Taylor Decker. Apparently, he's not going to be ready tomorrow. And, of course, we got Hutchinson is out and injuries all over. And I think that it's a testament to Brad and to Dan Campbell. The fact of the matter is they are so deep. And they made this roster one of the deepest, could be the deepest ever in Lions history, as far as I know. But I mean, they really did a good job of having backups and having guys on the practice squad and scouting the what do they call the waiver wire, the waiver list and stuff. There's constantly bringing people in, and I really find it impossible to go against the Lions. Although I will say it's going to be a very close game. I'll go like maybe, let's say 31 to 20 for Detroit, 31-20.
So Detroit can clinch a spot in the playoffs with an 11th straight victory, which would set a franchise record for you guys. Your coach said that you're in playoff football right now. This is the type of stuff that you live for, and it's the stuff that gets you ready for the tournament. Green Bay also has a lot to play for. They can pull within a game of the Lions if they can split the series. This game is going to be important to us as well. Now, I think one of the biggest keys to this game will Green Bay be able to slow down your running game. Jamar Gibbs and David Montgomery, I mean, you guys have been the first teammates in league history to run for at least 10 touchdowns in consecutive seasons, have combined to average more than 140 yards on the ground per game. Now, the Packers had limited San Francisco's Christian McCaffrey to 31 yards on 11 attempts and held Miami to 39 yards rushing in their past 2 games. So I think that's going to be one of the keys for at least Green Bay. And I don't care what our records are, because I think anytime an NFC opponent plays another NFC opponent, they play each other tough. I don't care what record you're having. If you're a 1-10 or a 10-1, you're going to come and play that game. It's like your biggest rivalry games that we saw in college. You bring your tough stuff, your A game. Home field has not always been an advantage in this series lately. The road team has won 4 straight games going back to Detroit, closing the 2022 regular season when you guys kicked us out of the playoffs. But you just never know. So I think I'm hoping it'll be a really good game. Of course, I'm on the opposite side for you, George, and that's okay. I respect you, and your team is having an awesome year.
Yeah.
But I do hope that my Packers can come in and beat you guys. But I think it'll be a very good game, so I'm looking forward to it. Besides that game for this weekend, what NFL game are you guys looking forward to watching this weekend? And I'll start with you, JB.
That's a great question. Honestly, looking at the schedule, not much that excites me this week. Probably if it's not that game, I actually want to see what the Panthers do against the Eagles. They covered 4 straight games. They won the first 2 against 2 really bad teams, but then they lost by, I think, 3 to the Chiefs and then 3 to the Bucks. Bryce Young's playing a lot better since they put him back in. Just for pure entertainment, I want to see what they do against the Eagles, because the Eagles like to blow teams out. So kind of see where both teams fall on that. I think that, to me, is going to be an exciting game.
George, what about you?
Well, there's a couple of them that come to mind. I think Cousins returning to Minnesota to face his former team is just going to be really, really interesting because it wasn't that he was disliked at all in Minnesota, but there are obviously not going to be many fans in it. It's very similar to when Stafford came back to Detroit, as you guys recall last season, where he was booed. And I mean, they loved Cousins when he was in Minnesota, but hey, he's moved on. Atlanta is not having a good year, but Minnesota certainly is. That's going to be an early game that I want to watch. The later game is going to be Buffalo at the aforementioned Stafford Rams because the Rams are struggling. They need a win, but Buffalo is playing out of their minds right now. Josh Allen. And that's going to be an interesting game. I'm looking forward to that late game. Yeah, Buffalo at LA. And then, like I said, the early one is Atlanta and Minnesota. How about you, Candy?
Well, obviously, tomorrow night's game is it for me, but
Yeah,
I also
yeah.
think what'll be interesting could be Seattle and Arizona. They're both
It's a good
playing,
choice.
pretty good.
Yeah.
That's another contest that could really. And the other one that kind of intrigues me is I know San Francisco is really depleted, but they're playing the Bears, and the Bears have been playing better. So I think that could be an interesting game to see how the defenses go against each other. We've seen, um, it'll be interesting. I also think we all know Trevor Lawrence went down with concussion protocol, but he has also now been placed on IR. He's having shoulder surgery. So I think the Jaguars Titans game could be interesting, even though they're both not good teams, but they're both at the same not good teams. See what will happen with that game as well. So, one last question. What college game are you most looking forward to this weekend? And we'll start with you, George.
Well, obviously, being a Big Ten guy, I'm looking forward to the Penn State Oregon game. That's going to be on CBS at, I believe, 8 o'clock at night. They're
Mhm.
playing it in neutral site, obviously, Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. And just I'll put my 2 cents in her. I wish they would rotate that game. Certainly, Ford Field in Detroit deserves one of those Big Ten championship games, but obviously. Um, I'll get off that soapbox. But anyways, Oregon #1. What can you say? Penn State, they've had a not so good several years past, okay, because they seem to play well, but they're never well enough to beat like an Ohio State or a Michigan or perhaps an Oregon. So we'll see if this Penn State team is a little bit different and could maybe pull off that upset. I don't think so, but I'm looking forward to that one. The Big Ten championship game is going to be a really good game.
JB, which college game are you looking forward to?
So I think I want to see SMU Clemson. I mean, I'm not sold that Clemson is, uh, as bad as their record at 9-3. But I like the way SMU has played this year, coming into the ACC. They've done a great job, going 11-1. I'm excited to see them. I don't think I saw them enough this year. To me, the other two big other conference games don't really do anything for me. I don't think Penn State stands a chance against Oregon. And I hope Texas, slaps Georgia around. And I like Georgia. But because of the whole Alabama thing, I want the SEC to look as stupid as possible. And the only way that's going to happen is if Texas just walks all over Georgia. And, maybe the committee will say, well, maybe this league isn't that good. We got to throw in Miami.
And I think there's some other interesting. I think the Big 12 championship, number 15 Arizona State against number 16 Iowa State. Those are, too closely together, both 10-2. First in the Big 12, second in the Big 12. Puts two good ones together. I think that could be a good game, and it'll be interesting. I looking forward to seeing if these games are competitive games, and if they're not, then what does that do? And I think honestly, I think that guy that I forget what his name is, that was talking about the college football playoffs. I think you're premature in saying that there can't be any movement with the teams that aren't playing this week, because depending on how these games look, that has to play a role because it's a game that they're playing. Whether they, I get it, they made it to the conference championship, but I think you can't blanket same statement that it can't change anything at all. But that's my 2 cents. George, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
Okay, you can find me on the South Florida Tribune website. I write under the Motor City Tribune, my column. At the end of my column, you'll see a link to, that book right there, you see. I wrote it several years ago, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air, capsulizing baseball, football, basketball, hockey, and local sports broadcasters. And there's a link to it at the end of my column. You can get it at Amazon. You can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com as well as on LinkedIn. You can find me on X at SandGSports99. And I look forward to being on this show and obviously 108 Stitches baseball show, as well as other shows on the network. So great being part of the action again today.
JB, how can they get a hold of you?
JB_ the program on X. SidelineSportsNet.com. SidelineSportsNet.com is the website. Candy designed it and updates it for us regularly. She has some pictures on there. George has some articles. I have some articles. Lots of good stuff on there. You'll see we got the Philly market coverage, Chicago, New York, Washington, other stuff. We cover a lot of stuff. I mean, if you're not paying attention, you're missing out. Also, Sideline Sports every Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. here, Believe Network, WDJY in Atlanta. We're all over the place.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning in the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your normal host, Scott the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth, my husband, and the foreword is written by George Eichhorn. They both did an amazing job. It's a great book, great read. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. It's a great gift idea, especially if you know anybody that wants to get into the media business. It talks about Scott's 40 plus years in the media business and how it has changed, old school versus new school media. Has some great stories. Talks about some great broadcasters, some great different athletes. Scott's a great storyteller, so go get the book, read up on all the different stories he has to tell. He's actually going to be writing a second book coming. He hasn't started yet, but he is going to start that soon. There's a link for our book on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. There's also a link to our merchandise store where you can get a South Florida Tribune hat or sweatshirt. If you need any other gift ideas, go there, check it out. But you can also check out the great writings of Scott, George, and JB. They all have articles up on our website. I do take some pictures and put them up there once in a while. There's also all kinds of other writers and great content, so go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you see that little red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, that means you have not subscribed to our channel yet. Please do so. And share us with all your friends and family. And the other thing is support everybody that we have on all of our channels, all of our different shows. As they give us their time, we want you to, go check them out as well and support them. What else? If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott, 954-304-4941. If you want to be a guest on a show or have a show idea, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Guys, this has been great. I know I was only filling in for Scott, and I those are big shoes to fill, and I don't come close to it, but I tried my best. So with that, any last parting shots, anything anybody wants to say before we close it out?
You did a great job, Candy. Yep.
Definitely a great job. You
Yep,
know, and
and
real quick this week we lost a legend. Lou Carnesecca passed away, former St. John's and New York Nets coach. 526 wins for St. John's. Legend. Grew up watching him coach St. John's. One of the classiest coaches in basketball. You know, rest in peace, Lou. It was great being able to see you while you were there.
Rest
and
in
I got
peace.
one that we lost here locally. Former Detroit Pistons general manager Oscar Feldman died, 103 years young. He was one of the driving forces behind the scenes when Bill Davidson purchased the Pistons from Fred Zollner back in the late 70s, early 80s. And Mr. Feldman did a great job as not only the team's GM for a couple of years, but as the team's legal counsel. And like I said, pretty much the right-hand man for owner Bill Davidson. So rest in peace. And Oscar, you'll be remembered by Pistons fans for many, many years to come with all those championships and great signings that you guys had and drafting. So rest in peace also to Oscar.
Yes, rest in peace. The last thing I will say, we wish our host hopefully good better health and get some rest and get better so you can host us next week. We'll be talking to you guys. Enjoy all the football that we have in front of us. And good luck to any of your teams. Have a great week. Night.
Bye-bye.